So this is what the ice maker looks like as it's making ice. And this is supposed to obviously fall away as it makes ice and fall down into the hopper. And this is what it sounds like when your ice maker is dying. I don't know what's going on with it, but it's freezing up.
Hey, welcome back. Folded here. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you've seen this little GEVI Ice Maker that was given to us, and I've had to repair it. This will be the third time that I've inside of it. You heard the noise it was making just a few seconds ago. It's really loud, kind of wakes you up in the middle of the night or whenever it happens. It just freezes up and goes to squealing like a cat. And it's noisy. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking it apart and I'm trying to figure out what is happening with the ice maker. So I've pulled the top of the machine off, and I've also pulled off the top of the ice chute. The ice comes out of that metal bullet cylinder, like out of a revolver. There it comes up, and it's cut off every so often as it comes up, and then it breaks off, and it's supposed to fall into the ice tray down below. This is just the beginning. Maybe you can hear the machine running in the background, maybe you can't, but it's very quiet. It's just normal. This thing worked great under normal conditions, but what I've figured out at this point is happening is the machine is freezing up. It's not controlling its own temperature, or the other aspect that I'm thinking of is that it doesn't have water flowing through it. So maybe the pump's gone bad. The machine made the same kind of noise when the pump went bad at the beginning when we first got it. That's what was wrong with it. So I'm kind of leaning that way. And I'm just working through the different issues right here. I'm just trying to see what happens. I've taken it apart, and I'm just trying to watch to see what's happening. Now, the reservoir tank, the IR tank, is right there on the lower right part of your screen with the wires running into it and the small round circles on top of it. The water pump pumps water up into that tank. So I know the pump works. I just don't know if it works enough. I can feel the pump running down below. I can see a little bit of water flowing. It seems to be taking a while to fill that tank. I've never timed it before in the past when I first put the pump in, and so I'm not real sure, but I can tell. I just don't think there's enough water coming out of it, so I'm kind of going with that. I went ahead, got online, and ordered me another pump to replace that pump to see if I can fix this for another whatever it was a year ago, $12, $14. And because we really like this, if not, I'm going to have to buy another one. So that's my options. I hope to be able to fix this one. But as it stands, I'm just going to bolt this top chute back on, and I'm going to watch it and see what happens. When it starts making noise, I'll come take it apart and dig into it a little bit more.
The main cooling tower, this is going to be full of ice and all frozen up.
Well, that's enough of that. I'm going to turn that off and talk over the video so you don't have to hear that squealing. As I said before, my thought process here is that originally I thought it was not controlling its own temperature, and this is completely frozen over, and it's making that squealing noise as I think the blade mechanism is spinning inside that bullet mechanism. Now keep in mind, it's only been maybe 15-20 minutes. It hasn't made much ice at all since I bolted it back together and walked away from it. And all the ice you see in this chute is just frozen to the sides and stuck, almost in a solid mass. So that's what it looks like inside that mechanism as well. And again, I was just thinking the machine is not controlling its temperature.
So I'll let it thaw out again, and I'll either take it apart and look at it, or I'm going to scrap it completely, because it doesn't really work at this point. And that is all the ice it managed to make before it froze up. So, unsure.
Now, the last time I did this, I had several people ask me how I got the sides off. So it's pretty simple, really. There's just the screws on the top and the screws on the front side behind all the covers. Take all the screws off, and then these stainless steel sides actually have to kind of pull up and slide forward because that lip right there hooks along that front edge. So you got to get that around. You lift it up and then kind of turn it like opening a door and slide that off the front. The door has to be open to get that off, and it comes right off. So anyway, it's got a bottom groove that it has to slide into, and that front groove has to go into its own groove. They're not the simplest things to get off, but they're kind of like if you've ever taken a computer apart, the old computers from the 90s. That's exactly how those things come apart. Then I had to take those off to prepare to replace the water pump, which is down the heart of this machine. And the first time I did this, I didn't really know how it went together, but I've figured it out. So here what I'm doing is just pointing out the water pump's down below there, and I'm thinking I'm going to replace the water pump. And to get to it, I need to take out these 2 screws and then the 2 screws in the front, one on either side. And obviously the chute's already taken off the top, then that whole front will lift out, and I can get to that pump to replace it. After I finished triage the unit the other day, then I decided the pump was not pumping enough water because it took too long to fill up the UV tank, and it just didn't seem to be flowing enough. So I figured the pump had gone bad, and replacing it was going to fix this. So this was my first strategy. And don't forget the bolts on this side. There's one here and there's one down at the bottom on the front. So once you have all these screws out of the unit, the big black ice hopper holder slides forwards in these grooves and lifts straight up, and you can lay it over to the side like I've done here. You have to get the 2 lower ones on the front, the 2 ones just above, like the second story right there that I pointed out at the end, and then that 1 bolt there on that, you can see that heat shield, it can stay there actually. Then you have to take the lines loose for the water pump, and the water pump's right there, easy to access. Now, I did get a new water pump in, and I went ahead and replaced it just like I did in the first video I did on this GEVI Ice Maker. Soldered a new unit in and bolted it all back up, put it all back together, and that didn't fix the problem. So I'm not going to go through all the video link to show you doing all that again. I'm just showing you this so that you see, hey, I did try that, and that is not what the problem was. So we're going to move on to what the real problem was. The old pump is probably still good. I'm going to put it back in the package and stick it in the shelf in case this new one ever dies on me again. But again, if you want to see that, go back and watch the first video I posted about a year ago on replacing that. So now I've got the new pump in. I've got it all plumbed back in. It's pretty simple. Set the ice hopper into the slot, slide it back, hook up the lines, and screw in all the screws. Pretty basic stuff really for mechanical work. And then I'm going to hook up the wires, and we're going to test it to see if it still does the same thing. And spoiler alert, it still freezes up. So this is the unit after I put it back together, and it's been running for, I don't know, 45 minutes or so, and it's squealing like crazy. That you can probably hear in the background. It still froze up, and there's just not enough water moving. So I've decided to check some other things. I'm going to look at the water lines and the bottom of the auger. So now I'm going to fast forward about 2 hours in time when I've taken it all, the top back off. I've taken the ice chute off. Decided that it wasn't the water pump. I've decided that it's somehow plugged up. So I've taken the top and bottom of the ice chute off just by unscrewing them, lifting them off, getting them out from underneath that, and then the top of these 3 bolts that hold the top of this bullet mechanism in place, and lift that off, and that gives you access to the auger that's in there. This is the thing that's cutting the ice. The water's coming up through that auger and freezing while it's going. Don't forget that little white piece I did the first time I put it back together, so make sure you put that back in there. But this auger, if you wiggle it around, it'll come out, and you can see how the water travels up and it freezes as it goes, and it comes out as a frozen chunk, and then it gets cut, and then it falls into the hopper supposedly. But you can see the nastiness in the gunk that's on the bottom of that auger and down in the bottom of that hole. Now I know I'm using a steel knife, a butter knife, sticking down in the bottom of that. I'm trying to figure out what that is. It's just hard water deposits in the bottom. But there's also a seal down in there that goes on the bottom of that auger you have to be real careful with. Also, you probably don't want to scratch up the sides of that tube, as it might cause the ice to stick. So just be real careful with that. I was trying to be real careful, but I was also trying to figure out what is going on here. Now here's the real problem. These rubber tubes, Lexan tubes, whatever they are, you notice there's hard water deposits in that tube right there. That's the tube that gravity feeds that mechanism, that bullet mechanism there, that it flows out of the UV tank, and it's just gravity fed. And you can see that little tube is just completely stopped up with just hard water minerals and deposits. Okay, I took a screenshot, and I'm going to break this down for you using that screenshot. The water tank and the ice reservoir are laid here on its side, and the water pump is stuck in the back where it takes in water from there. And from there it pumps water from the water pump to the UV tank via this small rubber tube with the braiding around it to keep it from expanding or collapsing on itself. It goes into the UV tank. From there, the UV tank feeds the water back down into the bullet mechanism from another tube that is also the drain tube and the feed tube for the unit. Now this feed tube is it's basically gravity fed from the pressure built up from the water in the UV tank. So the water pump's not really pumping anything pressure wise into it, just fills the UV tank. The UV tank gravity feeds everything below it. So once this line gets a little bit of blockage in there, it just continues to grow until the unit can't get any water, and that's what's causing it to freeze up. The water's not flowing into the unit because there's really no pressure behind it. Okay, now we have all that out of the way. It's basically just a matter of cleaning everything up. Now you can see I've got a little, actually it's a straw cleaner or whatever, pipe, a little wire brush. I'm just running it in and out of the bottom of this bullet unit to get that hard water deposits out of that part, and then I ran something similar, this one through the smaller pipe, and then a little bigger one of these pipe cleaners through the plastic hose. And I just poured a little water in there. I used a little bit of water with the cleaner in it, and I just scrubbed everything really good with these plastic brushes to get them cleaned up. And that took care of everything for me. The unit actually comes back on and runs fine as long as it's cleaned up. Now, this is interesting. I was going to pour this water in there to clean it up, to wash it out, and I didn't realize the hole in the bottom of this thing actually is sealed by that auger unit. So when I poured the water in, it just ran all the way through to the bottom of the unit. So just beware of that. Probably don't do that. Eventually I used a wet paper rag towel and that brush, wooden spoon, and I cleaned out the bottom of it. So anyway, pay really close attention when you pull the auger out and you pull the seal unit off of it, that you put it back on in the same orientation, because it's important. And just a safety check here, all of the edges on this unit are extremely sharp. That tin is like razor blade sharp. It will cut you up. And once you have it all cleaned up, it's just a matter of hooking the lines back together, cleaning out the little T. You just go ahead and clean out every line that's there. The lines that run down through the bottom and out the back that I'm pointing to there, they're just the drain lines. That same drain line is actually the feed line at the top. It feeds the unit right there. But you might as well go ahead and clean those out while you're in there. The other tube there with, like I said, the black spring around it, mesh, that is basically the pump feed line. It comes off the pump and goes into the bottom of the UV tank. So those two lines go into that UV tank that sits up there, and it allows the whole unit to work. You will notice that the lines are different sizes, as are the nipples in the bottom of the UV tank. And finally we come to the auger unit. I got it all cleaned up using, again, a toothbrush wire brush, you can see kind of how it's all done. You can see the seal unit on the bottom, the little spring-loaded seal that you see with the black there. That's what keeps everything from leaking out the bottom of this bullet unit. So you want to make sure you get that in there, you pay attention to it, and you get that in there in the right orientation, the same way it came out. So all that's left to do now is to bolt down the top part, and this top part of this bullet unit has a silicone O-ring around the top of that stainless unit, which makes it nice, but it is kind of a pain to put in with one hand, and so I think I set the camera down in here somewhere and get this straightened out. Now the good news is this is the last piece to the bullet unit. You have to get that silicone O-ring on there and in the groove. You set it on top. There's 3 bolts. It can only go really one way. I guess you could turn it, but it's pretty obvious to see which way it goes, with the ice chute bolting up with 4 bolts around the back side of it. There are 2 on the back, 2 on either side. So now I've got everything hooked back up, bolted down, and you can actually see water coming out of the UV tank, which I didn't have before. And you can see water coming up through the bullet unit and draining down into the ice bucket. And there you have it. That's how I brought my GEVI Ice Maker back from the dead, from the scrap pile anyway. Really just gave it a thorough cleaning. Now we are going to put it on a more rigorous cleaning schedule and try to take care of this so it doesn't happen again. But I hope this has helped you out.
And that's it. There it is, chugging away making ice. You can see my cleaning schedule here on the side so I can keep up with it. But nice and silent running. Been running since December 21st after I rebuilt it and cleaned it, looks like. We're all good. Had to get us a new scoop because in the process, Superdog chewed up the plastic one. Anyway, everybody have a great new year. Thanks for watching.